From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. Venezuela has embarked on significant labor reforms. President Nicolas Maduro and Vice President Tareck El Aissami have announced a 58% increase in the minimum wage and salary tables. This is effective immediately. They also detailed Easter bonuses for workers and a special bonus for 5 million women, which will become effective on March 8th. The announcement came hours after the presidential election date was pushed back to May 20th.
We have decided to increase the minimum wage and the salary tables of the country's workers by 58% in order to try to maintain a balance between the salaries and the sister ticket, and in the coming weeks we'll make efforts to maintain a wage to combat the effects of the speculation and the illegal trafficking of products, which affects costs and workers.
Venezuela's presidential candidates have agreed to delay the elections to March 20th. Nominees can officially register their candidacy until today. 6 have already done so, including President Nicolas Maduro. Our correspondent Freddie Gillingham has the latest reactions on this announcement.
So yesterday, some major news broke from the CNE after what's been a very long and busy week at the National Electoral Council. As a result of an agreement between opposition and government parties participating in this year's election, agreement was signed, and the decision to move the electoral date from April 22nd to May 20th is now going ahead. Obviously, this has provoked quite a lot of reactions from across the political spectrum, most notably on social media. President Nicolas Maduro, following the announcement yesterday, partook in a Facebook Live session where he said, I quote, "I want to go to a process of reconciliation with all Venezuelans. I feel very happy and satisfied with the agreement signed regarding that changing of the electoral date." In contrast, the Democratic Unity Roundtable have maintained their position of boycotting despite one of their major demands in the Dominican Republic being pushing back the electoral date. However, it seems they're not budging on the position they're taking, which is, of course, boycotting the presidential election. It looks like the US is still maintaining their stance with the MUD. An unnamed US government official is quoted as saying that the date of the moving is likely to deter sanctions. Washington looks like it will be siding with those political parties that still maintain the stance of boycotting. Still lots of divided opinion regarding this. It is, of course, the last day today for when presidential candidates can put themselves forward as nominees at the CNE today. We'll keep you posted if anything surprising comes up.
Thanks for that, Freddie Gillingham. In memory of the 5th anniversary of the death of Hugo Chavez, a teleSUR crew went through the streets of Caracas in Venezuela to ask people what his legacy means to them.
Hugo Chavez died on March the 5th, 2013, but his memory lives on through his followers. Many people remember him years after his death. Even children know his legacy and feel he is still with them.
For me, Chavez was a great man. He worked for his country and put his eyes on the poor. That is why he'll always be in my heart.
Chavez is like my family. He helped my family to build our home.
Chavez was president between 1999 and 2013. He's still worshipped in many parts of Venezuela. His eyes, painted in different spots of the cities, still watch over the country. In 2002, a coup d'etat removed him from power for 48 hours. He called elections almost once a year, and also a referendum in 2004, which he won. But his followers remember him more for the social policies he applied.
He taught us love, and he loved us. I'm disabled, and he helped me a lot. I keep him in my heart, and for me, he's still alive.
One of Chavez's main accomplishments was to establish democracy, and it is still present in modern-day Venezuela.
He's still alive in the hearts of Venezuelans. He was really an impressive president.
The revolution he started and led has a new appointment in electoral schedules. The opposition doesn't have a strong political plan, but is still supported by the United States, which applies strong pressure trying to break Venezuela's stability. That is why this is a huge challenge for them in the next elections.
El Salvador goes to the polls this weekend. Political parties have ended their campaign, and it's now up to the people to decide.
The Supreme Electoral Tribunal has initiated the campaign blackout period, which prohibits the dissemination of election promotional materials. With that, political parties closed their electoral campaigns on Wednesday. The FMLN made a call to its supporters to spread the message of how important the benefits achieved in the leftist FMLN governments are.
The FMLN is the Salvadoran people's instrument for transformation and betterment, a party that with its government is promoting a comprehensive health reform that is bringing improvements in health to all corners of our country.
The right-wing Arena Party brought its campaigning to a close in various municipalities throughout the country, urging their followers to support their projects. Political analysts see a potentially flawed system for choosing judiciary powers, where judges of the Supreme Court of Justice and the Attorney General are chosen by members of the Legislative Assembly.
When the people elect the Legislative Assembly, they are also choosing a second-grade body, and we, the people, when we vote and choose, are giving the mandate to the Legislative Assembly so that these can choose people for office that should require a much more rigorous procedure.
The FMLN candidates aim to increase the number of deputies in the Legislative Assembly so that the parliamentary arithmetics allow for the continuation of the party's social programs.
Efforts like the agricultural package and Ciudad Mujer or Women's City demonstrate that we are on the correct path. We have hopes that person-to-person contact and the efforts we have made throughout the national territory will allow us to win municipal and legislative victories.
The Supreme Electoral Tribunal has distributed the electoral parcels to all 14 departments throughout the country to be distributed to the 1,595 voting centers so that electors can cast their votes on Sunday, March 4th for their chosen candidates.
The European Union was invited by the government and Supreme Electoral Tribunal of El Salvador to observe Sunday's election. It has 80 observers in all of the country's 14 departments.
We've been following all of the campaign period. We have our long-term observers in all 14 departments, and they've been passing us information about how the campaign is going all across the country. And from those observations and from meetings we've had at the national level with the different stakeholders, the opinion that we're hearing is that these are one of the most peaceful campaigns so far in El Salvador since the peace accords.
Colombia's presidential candidate and former FARC leader Rodrigo Londoño was hospitalized on Thursday after suffering a heart attack. The episode happened just after he was campaigning in the municipality of Fusagasugá. Medical staff said his condition is stable. The former guerrilla had had another heart attack 3 years ago in Cuba during peace talks between the FARC and the Colombian government. And Colombian authorities have announced that guerrilla fighters who recruited underage members after 2005 will not receive an amnesty. The president of the Constitutional Court, Alejandro Linares, said that militia members who had recruited children aged 15 to 18 will not be eligible for an amnesty. Colombia signed an agreement with UNICEF to protect the rights of children. Colombian presidential hopeful Gustavo Petro has graced the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. Petro gave an exclusive interview to the magazine for its February edition. He talked about his militancy in the insurgent movement at 19, democracy in his country, and the depolarization of national politics. His official candidacy is expected to be confirmed on March 11th by the coalition of left-wing parties. Petro has warned he expects the election to be marred by fraud. And time now for a short break. Coming up next, a special report on the militarization of Rio de Janeiro. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're continuing our series in the military intervention in Rio de Janeiro. The move has been condemned as a strategy to improve the image of a government that rose to power in what's being called a political coup.
Since becoming president, Michel Temer has signed laws critics say have reduced the rights of workers and cut public investment. Now, faced with allegations of corruption, Temer's approval rating has dropped to a mere 6%.
Most people don't approve the pension reform. Temer's popularity, which was already very low, has dropped even more. And as everyone knows, public security is a topic that concerns the people of Brazil. His answer is military intervention. Public security isn't solved like that.
The local governor, who is a member of the same political party as Temer, is accused of being responsible for the chaos that some people in Rio de Janeiro are living in.
This is totally arbitrary. For me, this is all marketing. We have an election coming up this year, so for me, this is, look, we're doing something.
For many, this political adventure could bring serious consequences to the image of the armed forces and to the state. The Organization of Human Rights, Justicia Global, has announced the military intervention at the UN. They say the constitution doesn't allow the transfer of civil power to the military and ask the world to pay attention.
Beyond the human rights violations that are likely to affect the black and poor, democracy is also at risk. We want international observers and international mechanisms of human rights to stay alert to what is happening in Brazil.
Temer is also accused because with his military action, he is trying to steal votes of the extreme right. Without a presidential candidate capable of winning the elections this year, and with Michel Temer's high unapproval rate, the right is looking, through public security, to impose its agenda in Brazil. But in the streets of Brazil, one can feel this strategy has not worked.
Desde Rio de Janeiro, André Vieira e Sebastián Soto, teleSUR, Brasil.
Colombia and the U.S. are working to clamp down on the cocaine trade. The two countries hope to halve the production of cocaine and the cultivation of coca leaves in 5 years. The announcement came from the U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Thomas Shannon, who is on a South American tour.
A joint commitment between Colombia and the United States to expand the anti-narcotics collaboration for the next 5 years in the recognition of shared interest and responsibilities to achieve a steady reduction in the trafficking of drugs, illegal narcotics. This effort includes the national implementation of a comprehensive and integral anti-drug strategy that aims to reduce the estimated production of cocaine and coca crops by 50% by 2023.
The coca leaf, which is turned into cocaine, covers almost 200,000 hectares of land in Colombia. That's equal to 910 tons of cocaine. And questions are increasing about the effectiveness of Mexico's crackdown on drugs. The latest report by the International Narcotics Control Board shows heroin and fentanyl exports to the United States are rising. The report also states that 3/4 of cocaine consumed in Mexico comes from Mexico and Central America. Mexico under international pressure to combat drug trafficking after more than 25,000 murders were recorded from drug violence. And Mexico's ambassador, the United States ambassador to Mexico, Roberta Jacobson, has resigned. Her final day on the job will be in May. Jacobson's announcement comes as relations between the United States and Mexico are at a very low point. She added she doesn't know who would replace her. Jacobson was appointed ambassador to Mexico in May 2016 by former President Barack Obama. Peruvian Congressman Kenji Fujimori, brother of former presidential candidate Keiko Fujimori, has resigned from the Popular Force Party, saying the party no longer has moral authority. Fujimori made the announcement after Odebrecht executive Jorge Barata testified to Peruvian district attorneys in Brazil that the company had given campaign funds in 2011 to all leading presidential candidates in Peru, including $1.2 million to Keiko Fujimori, to Kenji's sister, Keiko Fujimori. And still in Peru, police and students clashed during a demonstration against labor reforms for young people. The bill currently being discussed puts forward mandatory unpaid internship for students up to 3 years. It has been dubbed the Youth Slave Law. During this last demonstration in Lima, police used tear gas to disperse protesting students. In Bolivia, a painting depicting the Virgin Mary half naked and wearing a thong sparked religious-fueled outcry and fury from the Catholic community. Believers marched holding images of the Virgin in the Bolivian city of Oruro, demanding respect for their faith. The artist Rilda Paco explained that the thong symbolizes the differences between the oppression of women throughout history and a renewed hope in modern times.
I think they are exaggerating because for once they are not respecting my freedom of expression, my freedom of thought. If the same Catholics do not pronounce themselves when a child or a woman are raped or murdered, I do not understand why they can come to me and criticize me if they do nothing.
The controversy puts the issue of artistic expression back on the table. It also brings back the argument between freedom of expression and religious beliefs. The Habano Festival, celebrated in Cuba, reached a milestone in its history as it gathered more than 2,000 participants from over 50 countries. The largest international meeting for Habano lovers will close with a $1 million Humidoras auction and a gala evening. The festival featured 184 exhibitors from 20 countries. Last year, the gathering recorded $50 million in sales. Time now for another short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Strong reactions have been coming from steel exporting countries after the United States imposed tariffs on steel and aluminium. Political analysts say the decision is disastrous and could even lead to a trade war. U.S. President Donald Trump announced duties on steel exports will jump to 25% and aluminium to 10%. There are more than 100 countries that will be affected by this. Canada is the largest steel exporter to the United States. Brazil, South Korea, and China are also big steel trade partners. The fear of a trade backlash rattles stock markets around the world.
Obviously, we're following this situation very, very carefully. What I can say is that any tariff or any quotas that would be imposed on our aluminum industry, our steel industry, would be unacceptable. Any such decision would have an impact on both sides of the borders.
China urges the U.S. to show restraint in using protective trade measures, respect multilateral trade rules, and make a positive contribution to international trade order.
In France, farmers are wary of a trade deal between the European Union and the Latin American bloc Mercosur. They say they will not be able to compete with South American meat, which could be cheaper by $6 a kilogram. The EU signaled last month that it could open up its market to more beef from Mercosur, and that could put almost 30,000 tons of more meat on the market.
At present, we condemn the practices authorized in Mercosur countries, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, and prohibited in our farms. We are not asking to be able to do the same thing here, quite the opposite. We are asking that the meat coming from Mercosur are produced in the same condition as the European ones. Especially, for example, you have two issues: bone meal, which is still authorized in these countries, and the use of antibiotic as a growth accelerator. There are practices that are completely prohibited here in Europe.
Italy is going to the polls on March 4th to elect a new prime minister and members of parliament. The government is trying for the first time a new electoral system with a third of MPs directly elected by the people and 2/3 by party list proportional representation. According to surveys, the frontrunner for the elections is 31-year-old Luigi Di Maio, the leader of the Five-Star Movement. If elected, he would be Europe's youngest prime minister. Other major political parties in the race are Forza Italia, Northern League, Brothers of Italy, and the Democratic Party. Israeli police have questioned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over corruption and bribery allegations. His wife is also being investigated. The case involves the country's largest telecommunication firm, Bezek Israel. Police allege the company provided favorable coverage of Netanyahu in exchange for favors. In February, the police recommended Netanyahu be indicted. Last week, 7 people close to him were arrested. And now let's have a look at some other news making headlines around the world.
Gunmen have attacked the army headquarters and nearby French embassy in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. Reports say at least 7 people have been killed in the attack, but local authorities have not yet confirmed the exact death toll. A fire at a rehabilitation center in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, has killed more than 24 people. The blaze started in a ward for bedridden patients. It was sparked by an electric short circuit. 31 people were rescued. 4 were taken to hospital. A child has been killed and a dozen others wounded in a suicide car attack in eastern Kabul, Afghanistan. The Interior Ministry said the target of the attack was a foreign convoy. The strike comes just 2 days after President Ashraf Ghani offered peace talks with the Taliban to end more than 16 years of internal war.
A huge blast occurred. It was so strong I took cover at the wall. Everything was falling from the sky. When we came here to the blast area and saw 2, maybe 3 wounded people taken away by a police ranger vehicle.
Thailand has opened registration for new political parties. This is first return to the democratic process since the military took power in 2014. The junta chief said elections will be held by February next year. So far, 34 new political parties have registered.
And finally, the Festival of Colors, Holi, is being celebrated across India. During the festivities, people splash color and water on each other. They dance to the tunes of traditional drums. It's one of the biggest festivals in India. Holi marks the start of spring. Pictures from the celebrations are often selected for postcard images of India. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Tony Gray. Thank you so much for watching.